Hello out there. Um, I'm making this video because I'm getting a lot of messages from people who have experienced Kundalini awakenings that are going through some challenges as a result of the awakening process, and they're seeking some guidance. And I thought it might be a good idea to just make a quick, short video, um, giving some explanation of some of the hallmark experiences of a Kundalini awakening, some of the challenges you're bound to face or likely to face, and some of the manners or ways in which you can seek relief. Some of the things that you can do to cause yourself a little bit of unknown and unnecessary stress and distress. So this is all from my own experience and from what I have read, and what I have done and implemented in my own life. So take it for what it's worth. I hope this can be helpful. I'm going to keep it really short and sweet. Um, so as a result of some of the videos that I have put out on YouTube, I've gotten more than a couple people reach out to me asking, all right, I've had a Kundalini awakening. This is happening to me. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to move through this? My life is falling apart. I'm having anxiety attacks. I'm extremely fearful. Like, so many things can happen. Pain in the body. But first, before I get into all of that, what I want to explain about a Kundalini awakening. It is like the human equivalent to the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Not every human being experiences it in a particular lifetime, but every human being has the capacity to awaken their Kundalini or have their Kundalini awakened. And it is an introduction into the higher capacities that we have as human beings. It's like a rite of passage into our spiritual identity. And when I say spiritual identity, that is completely different from religious identity. Spiritual identity is the identity within ourselves that connects to the undying nature, the essence of our consciousness, our energy, our energy in motion, and even subtler than that, our consciousness and our spirit. Okay, so we're starting to awaken the identity of our spiritual essence. And when the Kundalini awakens, basically there is a reservoir of um, latent energy that sits at the base of the spine. That when the environment is ripe or prime in the consciousness and in the physicality, this energy is awakened. And through the awakening process, there's an impact that occurs not only spiritually, emotionally, physically, but at the level of our DNA. So there's a whole process of breaking down and rebuilding and purifying that is going on that's beyond our ability to even comprehend. And with that comes our own version of a dark night of the soul. And for each person, a Kundalini awakening is different. There are, like I mentioned, some hallmark experiences that a person might go through, but just like our fingertips and our fingerprints, right? Our fingerprints are different and our irises are different. The awakening of a Kundalini, the Kundalini energy within us is different for each and every one of us. It is reflective of our own spiritual identity coming into existence and maturity. So let's say you're Kundalini awakened this can happen in many different ways. It can happen spontaneously without any effort or intention or any knowledge about Kundalini energy whatsoever. That's how it happened for me, even though I was practicing Kundalini yoga at the time, which I'm sure facilitated the awakening. I had never heard of a Kundalini awakening. And it was kind of fortuitous because if I had, I probably would have put a lot of ambition and effort into awakening it. And in doing that, you often it often goes against the awakening process, right? The awakening process, the energy of Kundalini does not respond to force or ambition. It responds to availability and surrender and openness. So the more that you try and force your Kundalini to awaken, the less likely it is to happen. Just a side note. So You can awaken spontaneously without any knowledge. It can be awakened through a psychedelic experience. It can be awakened through childbirth. It can be awakened through trauma or near-death experiences. And, a number of other possibilities. But let's just say it awakened, right? And with the awakening process comes this massive experience of what the world is beyond what you thought it was before, what life is about beyond what you thought it was before. All of the paradigms and the constructs of reality have been blown out, and all of a sudden you realize that you are one with the universe, you are one with consciousness, you are one with that which is beyond the ability to comprehend. And oftentimes these experiences create a lot of euphoria, create an increase in your IQ, create the ability to have extrasensory perception. All of these things can awaken within you. But eventually, after the awakening process happens, there is a coming down period, right? That you come back down to a vibration or frequency that is more in sync with your surroundings. Because when it awakens, you lift up into a space that's beyond the mundane. But eventually, you find yourself back down, unless you're one of the very few who, like Ramana Maharshi, a yogi saint, who remains in that space, right? Those are enlightened masters. But not all of us, and a good number of us, are not at that level. And so we come back down into the mundane, but we are changed. Our perception of reality has changed. Our perception of what life is, what death is, and any number of things have changed. And then with that new wisdom comes a new perspective on what life is all about. And so you start to reframe the people you spend time with, the job that you're doing, the life that you're living. And so the beautiful awakening experience can create some sort of a life crisis after it has happened. And so what I'm experiencing is a lot of people reaching out to me during that type of life crisis. What do I do? How do I make my life better? How do I move through this? How do I go back to normal? Oh, that's the worst, because quite honestly, it's never going to go back to normal. So how do you create a reality with the new normal, with now all that you know? The Kundalini Awakening is an invitation into a new reality. So how do you support that new reality? First of all, cultivating personal and spiritual sovereignty, trusting the energy that's moving through you, trusting what's going on, trusting your motivations and your inspirations to bring new things into your life and to phase out things that no longer are supported or relevant. Right? For me, I dismantled a lot of friendships. I dismantled a full career that I had built my whole life around. There's a lot of deaths and rebirths. One thing that I would say that is necessary and integral is some sort of energy practice, because you're working with the energy of consciousness and it's moving through you in a heightened and concentrated way that the body does not yet have the full capacity to manage. The bandwidth is still somewhat limited. You have to strengthen your nervous system, and you have to strengthen, your body and your capacity. So a practice of yoga, a yoga practice, some form of yoga practice, whether it's Kundalini yoga, whether it's Hatha yoga, any type of yoga that resonates with your personal constitution, right? Some people like hot yoga. I personally find it inflammatory. I don't like it. I like more balanced forms of yoga. So whether it's gentle hatha, whether it's restorative yoga, whether it's tai chi or qigong, or some form of moving meditation, even going for walks, all of these things are very supportive to help move the energy through the body and get you acclimated to the awakening process. This is what yoga and meditation were created and designed to do, is to assist in the awakening process. They are supportive technologies to the awakening process of consciousness, which is brought on by a Kundalini awakening. So they're like perfect bedfellows. Practice of yoga or meditation if you're awakening, if your Kundalini is awakening. The other thing that I found super useful is hydrotherapy, water therapy, hot and cold. So when I was going through a very difficult period of my Kundalini awakening, where I was extreme amount of pain in my body, feeling an extreme amount of just pain and restriction in my body, which in through reading various yogic texts, they speak of the karma being released through the body, right? Kind of hard to grasp, but I just leaned into it and I trust that. And so when I spoke to a naturopath, they said the best way to work through that is to do vacillating between hot and cold therapy. And so I took their advice and I found it to be so transformative and helpful for that process of pain that I worked through for about 3 years in my body. Um, I would go in between like a cold plunge, sit in it for 3 to 7 minutes, as long as you can manage it. And that time that you can manage it increases over time. And then go into a dry, hot sauna or another hot tub, right? And move between cold and hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and do anywhere between 3 to 5 sessions of that. And remember to remain hydrated during that. That was super helpful for me. Sometimes people note that it feels like the energy of people being dark and evil around them. And sometimes you're in such a heightened state of sensitivity spiritually that you're seeing other people's darkness or you're experiencing other people's darkness and it feels heightened. I would be very conscious of managing and maintaining awareness around what you're taking in through the five senses, eyes, ears, all of that stuff. What are you watching on television? Sometimes violence can be really hard. Sometimes lyrics and music can be really challenging. I found during that very vulnerable time for myself that listening to mantra, like Vedic, Hindu, Buddhist mantras, were extremely healing and helpful into bringing me back into a state of peace and relaxation. So those are just a few little helpful hints that I found helped me move through my awakening process. Like I said before in previous videos, I don't know if I mentioned it in this one, that after my Kundalini awakening, it was about 3 years of moving through the purification process. And so I found myself out of the pain. I've found myself much more grounded in my experience of awakening in a way that has allowed me to now be of service to other people who are going through awakening. I personally did not have anyone to talk to during my awakening, so I referred to books of ancient yogis who spoke of the awakening process. Gopi Krishna is very helpful. Ramana Maharshi. When you're working with the energy of awakening, you want to refer to the awakened ones. That's a message that was given to me through Ram Dass, who was one of my favorite teachers. And I still to this day listen to Ram Dass lectures. Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, the former Harvard professor turned yogi master who's now passed away. But there are a ton of Ram Dass lectures out there, and he just speaks of the process of awakening. And he doesn't necessarily always specifically tap into Kundalini awakenings, though he does. But he speaks to the process of awakening, the process of coming into our spiritual identity and how to lean into that, and things that can benefit and things that can make it really challenging. And the things that I have found that make the awakening process very challenging, make it harder than it needs to be, is holding on to your old life, holding on to your old beliefs, wanting things to go back to the way that they were. They're not going to. You have to lean in and grow. It's as if a caterpillar was going through the half of the process of becoming a butterfly and saying, no, I want to go back to being a caterpillar. It's impossible. You have to find a way to embrace this new identity that's moving through you. Otherwise, you're going to create a lot of unnecessary strife and anxiety and even mental instability for yourself and emotional instability. Reaching out to spiritual community, talking to those who have awakened and what their experiences are. There's a beautiful book out there called Kundalini Rising. And it's written by a number of different authors. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, John Selby being one of them, if you're looking for that book. And it's a bunch of different short stories of others who have gone through the awakening process and what their particular experience was. And I found that very comforting and very helpful because each person's experience was slightly different, but there were some similarities. So I hope this video is helpful to anyone who's going through an awakening process right now and finding challenge. This too shall pass. It will get better. It will lift. It will lighten. But do things that help move the process into a very life affirming way, right? Don't hold on to the past and the way things used to be. Lean into this new energy trying to express itself through you and find life affirming ways to allow it to do so. Yoga, meditation, mantra, breath work, clean eating, good company, wholesome, media. All of these things can be really helpful to soothe you and bring you back into balance. And feel free to reach out. My name is Kara Looney. You can go to karalooney.com. I also have a 12-course series on the awakening of Kundalini energy that I will put a link to in the comments below. Namaste. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.